If I may quote our founding father, Alonzo Gartley, who said over 100 years ago, "This meeting of the Hawaiian Engineering Association is now in order." Ladies and gentlemen, friends, fellow engineers and architects, and honored guests, I am Martin McMurrow, and it is my privilege and pleasure to serve as president of what, over the last 101 years, has become known as the Engineers and Architects Association of Hawaii. I mention who I am for the benefit of those honored guests that might be here for the first time today. I think the rest of you know me all too well. As always, thanks to our December chair, Vice President Morrissey, we are expecting an exciting speaker today with a timely subject, our own beloved August Alhf, member emeritus of the EAH. I'm not going to go over the criteria for jokes again, but Ralph is going to be a training aid. This is how a joke should be told at the EAH luncheon.
Yeah, they should be funny, too. Bill had been married to Mildred for about 39 years, and he was kind of worried about her because he thought she was getting hard of hearing. So she's working in the garden, putting her way down there, and she can't see him, so he walks behind her about 15, 20 steps. Says, "What are we having for dinner?" Can't hear anything. Walks a couple of steps closer. "What are we having for dinner?" Still nothing. Walks up closer. "What are we having for dinner?" Still nothing. Gets up right behind her. Says, "What are you having for dinner?" And she turns around. "We're having chicken like I told you the last 15 times.
You just told Bill's joke. You told that last week.
Oh,
that's what I heard.
I thought he tried to bring you in it.
Well, the advantage of being in our golden years is every time we hear a joke, it's a new joke. My doctor said that my case is mild Anheuser's disease? What? Oh, Alzheimer's disease, right. Yeah.
I have.
He called it Irish Alzheimer's. It's where you forget everything except the grudges. And with that in mind, let me just simply call forward our EAH December chair, citizen, sailor, engineer, Bob Morrissey.
Well, we'd like to get right to our speaker, but I'll give you a little bit of history about Auggie Alhf. He's a member emeritus of the Engineers and Architects Association. He joined in 1966, so it's been 37 years. He's a graduate of the University of Utah, graduated in 1934. He has a master's from Colorado. He graduated with high honors. And he started his first job in Colorado. It was the Colorado River Project for the Bureau of Reclamation. And from there, he became an advisor to the Thai government. He moved to Thailand, lived there 5.5 years. And then from there, he moved to Iraq, where he stayed for 3 years. And that's what his talk will be all about today. And just after that, he moved to Taiwan after that. I believe that was 5 years in Taiwan. And then after that, they moved here to Hawaii, where he's remained. And he worked for Bell Collins and a firm, Sunlow, Tom, and Hara, which is now Hara? O'Hara. He's Irish? O'Hara. Oh. Japanese Irish, okay. But I understand that's now M&E Pacific, so Tidman's company. So I'll let Auggie just take over. And
well, I've prepared some notes. Iraq. I went to college. I didn't go to college to become an engineer. I went to college to play football. But I was very fortunate that the coach was a mining engineer who didn't want to raise his kids in a mining camp, so he decided he would teach. And it was he who inspired me to become an engineer, and I'm very appreciative of that. My tour duty in Iraq was in some way the most unfortunate of my career, and also the most interesting. I was hired by a New York consulting firm, Tibbetts, Abbott, McCarthy, Stratton, better known as TAMS. After 22 years with the Bureau of Reclamation, I had the opportunity to train some Thai engineers as a courtesy to the Thai government. They liked my work so well that they invited me to come to Thailand to be a consultant on the oil irrigation project. It was supposed to be for 1 year. Actually, I stayed for 5.5 years and became their chief designing engineer. That was one of my most desirable projects. But before that time, with the Bureau of Reclamation, was on the Colorado River project. That was a 7-state development and hinges around Hoover Dam. I didn't work on Hoover Dam, but I did work on the All-American Canal, the Coachella Canal, and a new irrigation project completely underground for Coachella. After 5.5 years in Taiwan, in Thailand, I went to go back to the Bureau of Reclamation. At that time, they were curtailing their activities because most of the Colorado River project was finished. And I didn't have military preference, so I didn't have much of a chance. So I accepted the invitation from the New York consulting firm to go to Iraq and be designing engineer on 5 irrigation projects. That, I think, was the most unfortunate project that I was ever on because of an accident. Tibbetts Dams had sent some engineers from their Athens office to Iraq to see what projects they could do. And these 3 engineers decided they would take one more trip to see the various projects before they went back to Athens and prepared their feasibility reports. So they hired an airplane, and the pilot took them to these projects. And as they were coming off, they had an accident. As they took off, the wind hit the plane tipped over, fell on its top, killed all 4 people. So we were the only 3 people who knew anything about the Iraqi project. We're now dead. So Dan sent in some more engineers from Athens. They gathered up what drawings and reports they could find, went back to Athens, prepared 5 reports, and submitted them to the Development Board of Iraq. And the Development Board accepted these 5. Well, I didn't know this accident happened until after I was there almost 2 years. Nothing seemed to fit. When we would do a design project, I would go and look at the site, and I couldn't figure out what the devil we were doing at this point. One time I went to a place, and I had this young fellow who was living in the area, and he said, well, I can't design a dam until I can see the terrain. I don't have any decent topography. So they took me out and said, this is it. And I said, there's nothing here but a dry lake. You know, but during the flood season, there was water there. So these people had designed this whole project around this one place. And it was when 4 of the projects was just like that. Nothing seemed to work. And the one project, a 30-mile-long canal to the town of High, had decent data, and I finished that job. Well, all this time, I was working with the Development Board. The Development Board was manned by the top men were U.S. engineers, and they each had an Iraqi subordinate. And after the revolution, I think the Iraqis must have known it was coming, because the next morning, when the American engineers went to take their job to the Development Board, they found their subordinates were sitting at their desks, and they had taken over. So then they sent the American engineers home. So I was there during that time, and eventually we had to send all of our people home, and I was next to the last. The project engineer sent his wife home. He was a colonel from the Corps of Engineers, and he stayed on and asked if I would stay because it was just myself and my wife. We had no children. So we stayed on, and he came around 10 o'clock one morning and said, well, here are 2 tickets on this afternoon's plane. Here are your credentials. They suggest you be on the plane. There won't be another plane for a week. So that was my exodus from Iraq. But I want to talk to you tonight about the history of Iraq, because I think it is most fascinating. Now, we're all acquainted with the ancient history of Ur and Babylon in the Bible and the Old Testament and in our history books. But the interesting part that I'm going to talk about has to do from the end of World War I until the present invasion. And the dates that I have written down, let me read some of these dates and give you what the significance are. In 1912, that was when they first found oil in Iraq. At that time, Iraq was part of Turkey. And Turkey occupied all of that country, including Saudi Arabia. So they formed the Turkish Petroleum Company, and they gave to Great Britain the rights to sell the oil from Iraq. In 1913, the boundary between Kuwait and Iraq was set by the Anglo-Turkish coalition. But Iraq never accepted that. And even when I was there, every map had a disputed territory, which was partly in Kuwait and partly in Turkey, or partly in Iraq. Now the real reason is that Iraq is situated on the second most prolific oil deposit in the world. Saudi Arabia first, Iraq is second. So all of that area, Kuwait, which is heavily endowed with oil, the Iraqis wanted all of that back. And they never gave up their idea that that should be part of Iraq. And that was what caused the invasion. The history of Iraq starts really, the modern history starts with the end of World War I. At that time, the Turkish government owned all of the area, including Saudi Arabia. The Turkish government sided with Germany in World War I and were defeated. But then their Turkish participation was in the Egyptian and the Saudi Arabian area, where they were fighting with the English. And we're all familiar with the story of Lawrence of Arabia, which an American author made up. Now, the four principal characters of Lawrence of Arabia were very vital in the history of Iraq. There were three brothers who were in the royal family of the Hashemite family of southern Arabia, and they were in Turkey and members of the Turkish army. And when the war broke out, they left Turkey, joined the British, and so these three Iraqi brothers were part of the British army. The fourth was a general, Turkish general, named Nur Said, who left Turkey and went and joined the British. So as you read Lawrence of Arabia, there are these three Hashemite kingdom men, and this Turkish general who followed along with Lawrence, and they had succeeded in conquering Damascus and much of the Middle East before Turkey finally surrendered. So these men they engaged in the conquest of Damascus. So one day, British decided that they would give one of the brothers the kingdom of Syria. So they declared that Syria now was British and that this young fellow was going to be king. Now, he was very well qualified, and he had been the leader on the assault of Damascus. And so he proclaimed himself the king and was accepted. But the United Nations then decided that they were going to make the decisions on how the Middle East was divided up. And they said, no, Syria could not be British, it had to be French. So they kicked out the Hashemite king, so he had to leave. But this time, Winston Churchill was a member of the British government. It was up to him to help on the allocation of lands in the Middle East. So he had promised these Arabs kingdoms. So they got together the 14 tribes of Iraq and says this is the new kingdom of Iraq, and put this one Hashemite man in charge. And he took over and he was well educated, and he did a very good job. So that was the situation in a long time. The other brother they made the king of Jordan. So we have brothers, one is the king of Iraq and one is the king of Jordan. And now these people were Muslims, and Jordan was right next to Israel. And that was important later on when they began to get together. But I have some other dates here. Let's see if I can say what they are. Just before 1957, 1958, when Nasser was in Egypt, he had the idea of forming the Pan-Arab Union. So he wanted Iraq and Jordan to join Egypt to be the Pan-Arabic Union. That was a very good solution for them because Egypt had the ongoing situation with the world. They had the government, they could handle things, but they didn't have the money. Iraq had the oil, they had plenty of money, and Jordan was sitting right next to Israel, and there was this trouble going on between the Arabs and the Israelis. So this was agreed upon by the three countries, and they were going ahead. Now at this time, the young king, the older kings had died off, and the young king had taken over, was about 20 years old, and he decided that he was going to marry the princess of Jordan, who was his cousin, and they would combine then the two kingdoms. And he was away on this mission when the Iraqi Revolution came along. Now Nouri Said, the Turkish general, had been the prime minister of Iraq for some 20 years, and he was one who actually ran the country, and he apparently did a very good job. It was he who developed the development board, because he told us, he says, well, the oil is gone, I want this country to be agriculturally self-sufficient, so that's why I want to spend this money. So we had an endowment of $50 million a year to spend on the development of irrigation projects. So that was my job, to develop 5 of these projects. Everything went along fine until this time when the king of Iraq decided to go to Jordan to finalize his solution, his marriage with the princess. And then the Nouri Said, who was the prime minister, was also a member of the United Nations. He went to New York to become part of the United Nations. They left in charge of Iraq Abdullah, who was a cousin of the king. During the time that Nouri Said was absent and the king was absent and Abdullah was in charge of the government, Qasem, who was a colonel at the Iraqi base in just north of Baghdad, took his army and he went down south of Baghdad to where the army post was, where they had all of the munitions. Now before this time, whenever the Iraqi army went on maneuvers, Nouri Said would only allow 3 or 5 bullets to each soldier, and they had to account for those 5 because he didn't trust them. He didn't want them to be armed. So this was a chance now that Qasem had. Nouri Said was out, the king was out, so he went south. He took over the army post and armed his army, and then turned around and came back into Baghdad. And he took over Baghdad that night. So he was busy consolidating Baghdad when the king unexpectedly returned and went to the palace. Nouri Said unexpectedly returned, and he got into Baghdad. He saw the commotion. He realized that Korah was in progress, and so he went to the palace. He found the king there and Abdullah, the regent, and they decided that the coup was in progress and wasn't anything they could do about it. So the story is that Nouri Said disguised himself as a woman and took across the river, Tigris River, to where he lived, and the boatman recognized him and reported to Qasem that he had seen Nouri Said. So Qasem came in, took over the palace, killed the king, killed the prime minister, Abdullah, and then started looking for Nouri Said. And he found Nouri Said about the middle of the next morning and killed him. So early this morning, I get a call from my resident manager that there is a coup in progress and to stay home. So at this time, I had in a Kurdish houseboy as a servant. We Americans, most of us, had Kurdish houseboys. These houseboys came from Kurdistan, which is right upon the junction of the three countries of Turkey and Iraq and Iran. And Turkey had discovered oil there, and they didn't want to give this up. So the Kurds was Christians. They had become Christians from the time of Christ, when one of his disciples went into Kurdistan and talked to people there. So they were the only Christians in the area. The others, Arabs, were either Sunnis or Shiites, and they have never been able to get along among themselves. So I sent my houseboy out to investigate. He came back and said, yes, a coup in progress. There are bodies hanging from the telephone poles. There's a truck going up and down the streets of Baghdad, dragging the body of Nuri Saeed. And when the body would wear out, they'd go get another body and drag it around. So we were told to stay home, and for a couple of days we did. Then I got to word, well, everything was fine, go back to work. So when I went out, I found that Baghdad had restored itself. Everything was cleaned up. But I believe that the Iraqis knew something like this was coming, because we were beginning to have trouble in collecting payments for our work. And they had plenty of money, but they just weren't paying us. And so the project manager decided the thing to do was to send our people home, which he did. So he collected all of the drawings that he could at the place and took them over to the American embassy, and they kept them there for safekeeping. Now, during this time, I had become well acquainted with a young fellow who was to be the next chief of the tribe near High, young fellow educated in England and very friendly. And he came to me and said, and understand that you have a design for a 30-mile canal which takes water to my city of High, and I'd like very much to have those drawings. I said, well, I can't give you the drawings because we haven't been paid for them, and anyway, the project engineer, the chief engineer, has those. So he became a bit angry with me because he says, I can take my tribesmen with our horses and our slips and graders. We can go ahead and build those canals, and we need this water. But shortly after that, our people were all sent home, and then I got notice this one morning that this was the time for me to also to leave. So that was my stay there during the revolution.
Now this is the way Baghdad looked from the air. This would be about 1957. The very left-hand end, you see that there's a point of land and the river. That's where I live. And across that there is an oil refinery, which is not shown. So I live there. This is coming into the airport. This is made out of Persian rugs, and this is for the people. During one time I came in on the plane, there was the king of Saudi Arabia was visiting, and this temple was erected for his benefit. So they had that, and this, I don't know, they had the reception, and they took him away. Now this is the Tigris River. This is a bridge that the British put across the Tigris. The British did a lot of work in Iraq, and you can see some Iraqis sitting on their guns. You can see how they're dressed. Now this is downtown Baghdad. The hotel on the right-hand side, the draping, that is where I stayed, and where the Americans stayed when they came in. During the time that we were there, Agatha Christie was there, and she was writing a book, The Murder on the Orient Express. And we stayed there till we found the place. But that is where the foreign correspondents have been, and that's been quite a few bombings in the last year or so since we've come in and taken it. This is a house that I rented, and the people in the Lanai there, that is the woman who was the wife of the gardener. The gardener would come around and drop off his wife and family. They would do a little gardening was needed, and then he would move on and come back again. So I have the house, the part that you see on the right-hand side, which where I lived, and there was an American colonel, lived on the left-hand side. Now, the peculiarity when you rented a house in Baghdad, you didn't rent it by the month, you rented it by the year, and you paid the whole year's rent before you moved in. This is the gardener's wife and his two kids. You can see how well they're dressed. That's some of the foliage that they put out in the yard. Now, the peculiar thing about the wife is everything below her lips is tattooed black. You saw an awful lot of this over there, horses, and he's probably got a sack of grain there. This is the typical dress, and it's right. You see there's his army officer with his things on his shoulder, and then he just pulled another army off. The man in the middle with a thing on his head, that's the way most of the Iraqis dress. The turban that they have, the color of the turban, the band around, indicates his rank and his tribe. Along the streets, you saw these places, and it grew beautiful oranges and dates, and you can go along and you find oranges. This happened to be one of my Iraqi drivers. Now, this is the way our kerosene came. We use kerosene for our fuel, for air conditioning, which we already had, and for our refrigerators and so on, and for our stove. This is a tank of kerosene being delivered to the house. Now, this was the holiest mosque in Baghdad. We were told as you walk by this thing, you want to glance inside, then don't keep your head in that way, but turn it the other way, because the Iraqis don't like it when you look inside. So I came by several times. But this shows the typical direction of the mosque, the entrance, and then the towers where the priest comes to call the people to prayer. You can't see it there, but the ornamentation along the top there, and also above the door, is Arabic writing. They use Arabic writing as an architectural form. And I don't know how to read it, but anyway, it does make a very attractive architectural form. There are the people going into the mosque. I went by there several times and snap these pictures and then move on. This is looking through the gate as we go in past the mosque. This was a food stand outside of the mosque. You can buy kind of a fig cake, or you can buy bread, cakes, and so on to eat.
But my treatment from the Iraqi people, I thought was very good. And I realize I really don't understand the friction between the Shiites and the other Muslims, because back 600 years or more, no more than that, in 600 A.D., when Muhammad died, he didn't leave a son. He left some daughters, and then they had some grandsons. So there was a big question who was going to take over the Muslim religion. Well, it had been pushed by his uncle, who I guess was really the prime mover, and Muhammad was just the prophet. And so they sent one of Muhammad's grandsons to Iraq to set up the Muslim religion there. But something had happened, and he was killed on the route. And so there has always been this affair from 600 A.D. to the present time of who is going to govern the Muslim people. So the Shiites of the southern part of Iraq outnumber the Sunnis, but they are having this ceremony every year. And we witnessed one of them by getting in disguise and going to an Iraqi hotel and staying overnight.
I took this from the room we were in. There was ceremony that the Shias have once a year. We had a young sheikh from South Iraq who wanted to take us to this ceremony. So he took us and we rented a room in this hotel. We had to come in the afternoon in disguise as Arabs and stayed overnight. And then at dawn the next morning, there was this procession which went to the mosque. This procession was the Shias, and they would have their heads shaven. They would be carrying a sword like a machete.
And these Shiites, when they prayed, they would take a knife and they walk around and they keep saying Hussein, Hussein, and they cut the tops of their head with a knife. They're all bloody. They have somebody in a casket they're carrying on the shoulder, and oftentimes that man dies. It's a very critical time, and we witnessed one of them.
So anyway, we were told, okay, you go into this hotel, second story, you stay there, and when it's quiet the next morning, well, then you can come out. So we went and stayed that night, and I wanted to take some photographs, but as I looked out, I saw there was an Arab watching our balcony, so I didn't dare take it, and we had to take flash anyway. So I didn't get any photographs of it. But anyway, we stayed, and I saw this ceremony, and it really scared the hell out of me, because I didn't want to get down among those people. And about middle morning when they cooled down, well, then we all went away, and they never went back.
The Sunnis who live around the Baghdad area, on this date, when the Muslim Shiites are having their ceremony, will go to their houses, pull the blinds, and stay because they are afraid to go out.
I'll run to the side. This is the desert side. These are people who've gone out to the desert to pick up branches and so on. They take it in and they use it for fuel. These are women who have gone out to the desert and these have picked up these branches. They carry things on top of their head and they take them back. And you see around this village, that which you see projecting above the village, those are the things which they have picked up. Now these people will move around. You'd wonder how they can herd herds on this and feed them, but they move around wherever there's any food. You see these processions. This is the grandfather and some of the children. This is the south part. These are women harvesting corn. This is in the central part. One time there was a big city around here, and now there is just nothing. This was a relic of some kind of a mosque. You look up there, almost to the top, you see people? Yeah, see the people up there? Give you some idea. And I had a picture once of a man with a horse even up higher. Common wagon. Now this is interesting. This man come across the desert. He's walking barefooted. He's going to Basra, and that's what he has on top of his head as his shoes. When he gets to Basra, he put his shoes on. This is a head walks across the Tigris Euphrates. That's the upstream man. This is an Arab farm in the southern part, grow mostly corn. This is where the Garden of Eden was supposed to be. There's a sign that this is the Garden of Eden. That stump you see there is supposed to be the old apple tree. This is Lake Tamar. There's a Tigris and Euphrates River overflow. They flood the central part becomes Lake Tamar. And a bunch of swamp Arabs have lived there for thousands of years. And these are maps that they make. They take them into Basra and so on. This you can see the size of Lake Tamar. A couple of boats fishing. Now at the side of the boat you can see are two water buffalo. They are taking water buffalo from one pasture to another. This is floating islands where they have built these islands and made of floating reeds, and they build a house on it, and they float on Lake Tamar. Fresh water, it's frozen. No. There's another boat. There's see taking forage to these water buffalo which are on the island. Now this is interesting. The guy wanted to cook his tea. What he does, he's holding a teapot in his left hand. In his right hand, he has some grass which is burning. He's holding the burning grass underneath the teapot, and he's going to heat up his tea for his lunch. Well, he's going into Bosnia. One of the canals. Some of the floating boats. Trees are interesting. Each one of those trees may have dozens of owners. Fortunately, it was not our job to decide. So we would tell the development board where we wanted to build the canals. They would go and find out who owned the trees. Then they would go to the sheikh, and the sheikh would convene each tribe. They would decide who owned the trees and how much the tree was worth. And then they would say, this is what the tree would be sold. The development board would buy it, and then we would cut the tree down and build our canal. This is a police station. Close up to the police station. This is one of the native huts. You see the palm trees in the background. These houses are made of reeds. These are reed mats. You see the mats on top, the mats on the wall. This is very nice. This is the women carry. This is how the Iraqi women carry their loads. Put it on top of their head, and away they go. This is the crossing of Bosnia. This was the king's yacht. Street scene in Bosnia. The man just to the right of center is smoking a water pipe. This was one of our engineering stations. People come all out to do this. This is Europe. This is what's left of Europe. There's a band down there below, gives some idea. This is where the archaeologists came and stripped it and took the things back to Baghdad. This is my wife and a couple of people from South America. You can see this is the wall now. This wall is about 5,000 years old. It's made out of clay, big clay. Now, the archaeologists took the ruins of he took it to Bangkok, he took it to Berlin, the capital of Germany, and so what I'm going to show you now is in the Berlin Museum. This is one of the walls I showed you before was in location at home. Now this is in Berlin. Now these are the glazed tile, which these were about 40 feet apart in the bridge construction. I don't cross it in. See how beautifully that tile is done? That was the Arab warriors at that time.
Well, my time is about up, so I won't transport. If you have any questions of what I've done, I'll open it up for questions at this time.
I'm puzzled about this irrigation area, because wasn't that area between the Tigris and the Euphrates kind of a swamp area that Hussein had drained later on?
The area between the Tigris and Euphrates River is lower, and that has been irrigated since about 4000 BC. And so, yes, now, the story I saw in the paper was that Hussein had drained that area. And I think that is, could be, but I can understand how angry they would be. I was in that area several times with the swamp Arabs, and they had their own civilization, their own houses, boats and everything, and very well organized. And if it's true, I think it's unfortunate.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. I'd like to give you the certificate of appreciation.
Our next meeting will be next week, 19th December, when we have Phil Leary, right? Yes. Speaking on Navy dry docks yesterday and today. Thank you, Augie, Bob, Fred, Steve, all of the others who made today possible. Until the next time, I wish you may ke aloha kumihana nui loa. I now pronounce this meeting of the AH closed.